Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kareem Prim, your host. We're here at The Spot. Co-host Damian Ware.
Good afternoon.
And Dame, look who done dropped by The Spot.
Yeah, we got the great Tara Mosley.
Tara Mosley. Now, this is the thing. Seen a statistic the other day. About 40% of teenage mothers graduate from high school. Less than 2% earn a college degree by the time they age 35. How the hell is this woman still around, doing her thing in the city of Akron? Tell us a little bit about Tara Mosley. Introduce yourself to our audience here.
Well, thank you for having me, first off. Part of Ward 5, I must add.
Absolutely, Ward 5 in the building.
Right
absolutely.
Here.
So, just a little bit of background about me. Not only was I a teen mom, I had 2 daughters by the time I graduated from high school. One of the things that I make sure that I tell a lot of my young parents, not just moms, but dads as well, a dream deferred is not a dream denied. Here I was, I got pregnant when I was 15, had my first daughter when I was 16. By the time I was a senior, I had 2 children. The system had given up on me. There was no teacher telling me, hey, you better take that ACT. There was none of that for me. It was like, she probably won't finish anyway. In fact, my health teacher, I remember coming back to school 2 weeks later after I had my first daughter because I knew it was exam week. And health teacher, keep in mind, she's the health teacher.
Right.
She waits till I walk in the classroom in front of the whole class and she said, oh, you came back?
Wow.
I thought you were going to quit.
Wow.
In front of the whole class.
Wow. What unapologetically said this in front of the whole class. But my classmates stood up for me. And in that very moment, that was a moment for me. Either I was going to allow her words to defeat me,
decisions are made,
or use this as a mantra to say, oh, well, let me show you something.
Right.
And so I use that as a driving force to make sure that all those people who felt like or thought like she did, but she said it out loud, there were other people who thought that as well. There was quite a few young ladies that were in school with me that had children in high school. And I tell people all the time, the one thing that Akron Public Schools finally got rid of was teenage parent centers, because that was their way of separating us from everybody else. Let's put them over here so no one sees them.
At my school.
Oh.
At North.
Yeah, they stuck them at North, or you were downtown, and whereas now it used to be right next door to the church. Right across from the police station. That's where I went. And it was like they tried to make you feel like, oh, Tara, well, maybe you should go to the Teenage Parent Center.
I saw
It'd
that.
be easier for you. And that was their way of shunning you. They just didn't want you there. And the thing that really showed me just how much they really didn't care about teen parents, and one of the things that we will make sure under our Mosley administration that we'll get to, I'll make sure it never happens again. So our senior year, I remember Central Howard, our counselor had me in the office and like 4 other teen moms. And then there was one guy that was in there with us and said, you know what? I forgot to give y'all enough credits to walk the stage.
Wow.
This was a week before graduation. She didn't give us enough credits for us to be able to walk the stage with our class. One of the girls was so infuriated, she went and found every one of her teachers and demanded, you all better give me my credits or I'm gonna have my mother come up here. Well, at that moment I was defeated. Right. They had me. They had me, they had the other girls sitting with me, and I said, they didn't give a darn about us. And I didn't say darn. They didn't care about us at all. And so she says to me, well, you have enough credits, but I should have given you an algebra class, but instead y'all gonna give me a drawing and design class. The hell I need a drawing and design class instead of giving me an algebra class. So here I am, I now have to go to summer school with these other young ladies.
Wow.
But here, this is where it gets really tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So the boy who was sitting with us, they allowed him still to walk the stage even though he didn't have enough credits. He still got to walk stage, but us who are moms, none of that.
Okay.
Y'all need to go to the Teenage Parent Center.
Okay.
So that was the start of everything, and I use that as that moment to say, everything that I've always wanted for myself, I needed to make sure that I got on my journey, because there was people like this who did
That's
not
amazing.
give a damn about me.
Mm.
And so I use that moment as a metric along my way to refer back to that moment. Yeah, when things get heavy, I remind myself of that moment and how it made me feel and how it made those other young women feel. And I remember once we finished school, they had this little punch and pie, like South Park. What's a punch and pie? We had one of those things.
Wow.
Give us a punch and pie, here's your diploma, beat it.
Yeah.
That's the way it felt.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I got married out of high school. Got married, and then finally after I had my son, I went to Akron U. So it was a little, I had a break in between there because I was a young mom, had a
Right.
family, got married, and it was heavy, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to try to be a parent, a wife, and go to school, and unfortunately things didn't work out, but this was somebody I had been with since high school.
Yeah.
We've been able to, reconcile our friendship and be
Mhm.
friends now, but it took a while,
It took a while.
even though we had
Some
kids,
work.
it took some work because we
Yeah.
were so young.
Mhm.
But all those things are all just
Made you resilient.
things
Okay.
within the system that allow me to be in this space where I am right now.
Okay.
So that's a little scope of where.
little scope.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you go to the University of Akron, 3 years, right? Transferred out to
Yes.
the Academy of
Court reporting.
Court Reporting, and you end up with Attorney Ed Parnes. How did that work out, and what was that experience like?
You know who Ed
I
Parnes.
know Ed Parnes. That's why I say it's no way.
You can see how he
no
said
way
his
that you
name.
be in
Yeah.
that environment and not have something rub off on you. You're going to see a lot.
Listen, I give 90% of my success to Attorney Ed Parnes.
Mm.
Okay.
90%, if
Mm.
not more, because he took a chance on me when other people wouldn't.
Mm.
I actually was working at the post office as a DCO while I was going to the Academy of Court Reporting, and I was like, oh, I got to get out of here. And I worked there during the time. I remember sitting in the break room too long because the Cavs were getting ready to draft LeBron.
Mm.
And I didn't
Okay.
want to leave the break room. And I'm like, they ain't going to write me up. I'm about to stay out here and watch this lottery draft.
Right.
And the next day, I just started sending my resume out to everybody. I said, I don't want this for myself. Because I knew I've always wanted to be a legislator. Knew
Okay.
that.
Wow.
But I had to make sure that I found my way along the way.
Okay.
And I just sent my resume out to all of these law firms, and he was the only one who responded to me.
Wow.
He
Mm.
was the only one.
Okay.
Yep, and that started it for me.
Okay. Yeah, that you kind of jogged my memory a little bit going back on the North High, because I went to North High and I do remember that particular scenario with like Teen Pregnancy Center and how they did kind of push these young ladies off. That actually the area was like an older part of the school, and they didn't come in contact too often with the
Yeah.
mainstream, of the school. So
Okay, so you say I knew I always wanted to be a legislator. Who does that? Who knows they want to be a legislator at that age? What was it about legislation in the political process and serving that attracted you?
Watching Law and Order.
Oh!
So
You
I
got
wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And when I was at Akron U, I actually, part of my work study program was working at the law library. So
Okay.
I worked at the law library, and to watch a lot of these law students, a couple of them I had went to junior high with,
Okay.
and to watch some of them, you get to see you're done.
Mm.
It was one of those things for coming.
Mm.
And it was it.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is terrible.
Mm.
And you would watch these young people just giving their all, but you start getting those C's, and it's just like, yeah, see you later, bye.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. It was intense for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need to be a lawyer because I want to be a legislator. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think these falsehoods about being in these positions,
Mm.
like you got to go to law school. No, you don't. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to care about people, be out here in the community doing the work, and want to make a difference and make a change.
Okay.
And
That's
so, that's
good
really
thing.
what it was. And
Okay. That sounds
That's
good.
big.
That's impressive, though. That's
Yeah.
impressive. I'm telling you, at that age, the last thing on my mind was being involved in politics, any of that. So I'll tell you what, we're gonna be getting started here. I'm feeling good. We're gonna go ahead and take a quick break and knock out our sponsor right quick and get that started with Upper Room Apparel. And when we come back, we're on the E. We're gonna get into some friendly fire, but first we're gonna friendly fire.
I'm okay with friendly fire. I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
You know, everybody tell me this is
dodging and weaving. I got
you. We were talking about it before you got here, and I was like, yeah, she kind of like Steph Curry. She's smiling a lot, but she'll kill you.
Trying to cut your throat.
You can't take, she ain't no joke. But don't let the baby face assassin, fool you. But we wanna kind of touch base and get an update on what's going on. We're on the eve of the Jalen Walker situation and that type of thing, and that's huge for the city of Akron. That's huge for the city of Akron because everybody, even if they're not 100% paying attention to it, their ear is kind of to see what's going on. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll come back in just 1 second.
All right.
Okay.
The perfect balance of streetwear and luxury proves we're just built different. The brand's DNA celebrates who we are, and is unapologetic in our cultural evolution. It's fueled by the aspirational motto and brand mantra, the upper room, where great minds meet. Walk with me.
Let's bring together every hood and every city, every borough. Real is rare and it's that upper room apparel. Meaning of the minds and it ain't nothing but love. Great minds think alike, two brains better than one. You got my back, I got your front. Forever solid, it's in us we trust. Might not come overnight, before you walk, you crawl. United we stand, divided we fall. United we stand, divided we fall. United we stand, divided we fall.
People can feel it in the quality of your service and your love and your care. And I tell you, Sister Terry, you know one of the reasons why I'm in your corner 120%. We're not in it just for popularity. You also have integrity. And when you're in it for your integrity, you love the people because they're worthy of being loved. You don't love the people just to get them to love you back. That's no ordinary politician. That's a statesperson serving the people. Same fundamental criteria. What is the quality of your service? What is the depth of your love? What is the scope of your courage? What kind of risks are you willing to take? Are you willing to cut against the grain? You've been cutting against the grain for 9 years, my dear sister. I know that. This campaign is so important and it's crucial. And it's why I'm not just raising my voice, but I want to do all that I can to make sure we have a mayor in Akron. That's my dear sister Tara, I'm telling you.
This is Tara Mosley, and I approve this message.
We back in the spot, and like we talked about, we're on the eve, literally on the eve of a judgment. Right. What we're looking for with this Jalen Walker situation. Tell us a little bit, kind of give for the people who have been living in a box, which can be absolutely nobody, but I want you to, in order to be able to give an update, I want you to be able to really kind of give us an overview of that situation for somebody who hasn't been paying attention, and then bring us up to date as to what's going on.
So Jalen Walker was a young man, June of last year, who was shot and killed by the police. He was driving in North Akron, and whatever ensued, he jumped on a freeway right off of Glenwood, and they have alleged that he shot at the police officers. There's no confirmation that ever happened, and it turned into the police saying shots fired, and then it turned into a high-speed chase across the freeway into the Firestone Park area. Jalen got out of his car to run, and 90 shots later, 46 of them hit him. He was dead on the Firestone's campus, and we are now waiting to see if this special grand jury will indict the 8 officers who opened fire on this young man.
And we talk about 8 officers, though, that have been back to work since about what time? I mean,
Well, they came back to work, but they're not there now. They're on
Okay.
administrative leave,
Okay.
and I don't think they did a good job of telling the community that. And so what happened was the chief came to some of us community leaders, I was one of them, about the possibility of bringing these officers back to work because they were short-staffed and they would do office duty. They would be, doing paperwork. They wouldn't be in uniform. They wouldn't be in contact with the community, or they was going to have to dismantle one of the units.
Okay.
Well, of course, the first unit they want to talk about is the gun violence unit. Well, why would we talk about dismantling the gun violence unit when we have gun violence going on in our neighborhoods? Like,
Right.
it just
Right.
don't pick the unit that
Yeah.
we really need to stay
Really need-
intact.
yeah.
I mean, we had the neighborhood response team. You could have had them do this work, but they made the decision based off of his advisory council to bring these officers back to work. And here we are now, and I think they brought them back in maybe October, November. Here we are in April, and they're back on administrative leave. So you're telling me you caught up with all the paperwork? Or maybe we shouldn't have brought them back at all.
Right.
Okay.
So here we are, the special grand jury. We do believe that a decision will be made either tomorrow or Tuesday because all 8 officers have declined to testify.
Wow.
So what's happening in the meanwhile? Like, what's to be expected? Because I see the city being boarded up.
Barricades.
Well, here's the problem.
What's the preparation?
They started boarding up City Hall before the jury was even seated. So you gave this narrative to the community, and not just to the community, but really to these potential jurors that it really didn't matter what they said. And how do you expect to seat a jury when who would want that kind of pressure on them?
Right.
If they would have called me for that jury, and I've always wanted to do jury duty. Every time they call me, I go in there happy, like, ooh, they're gonna pick me. And like, no. I don't know if I would have wanted to sit on this jury, because just because of the perception of you boarding up windows before we're even seated, you don't have to self-identify yourself. I don't think any of them will self-identify themselves. Now, some cases, some jurors do it because now they want to write a book and stuff. No one who lives in Summit County will want to self-identify in this case. I just don't see that ever happening.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I think since about Thursday, sometime last week, because I'm in the area here, and I took a trip out to the store out on State Road, and coming back across the bridge, I noticed the barricades, the road closing. At the current administration lives up that way, and I was thinking, I'm like, what's going on? And it kind of dawned on me, this grand jury deal with Jaylen Walker is coming up, but why would you send that message to the community? I guess it's kind of out of the way for people, east side, west side, maybe they don't see that, but being that the current mayor is right up the road there, we see that. So that was kind of.
So we got May 2nd, elections on May 2nd. Big job for mayor. Big job for mayor.
Yeah.
You get in there. Now, this is the thing. This is the crazy thing. This is a funny story. Mo, I see Mo. I go to the debate the other day, right? I go to the debate the other day, and I come out, and I'm walking to my car, and Mo pulls up. He's in his truck. They got the signs on the truck. I'm like, yeah, man, what's going on? He said, what you go up to? I said, yeah, I started doing a podcast, and I'm doing this. He said, man, you need to have Mayor Mosley on the podcast. I said, Mayor Mosley, I just left the debate. I don't think the election. Did I miss the election? I thought about to Mayor Mosley.
Yeah.
I was like, man, they really on it. But I said, I started paying attention, and I said, this sister knows her stuff. So this is what I look at. All right, got the barbershop, right? I used to have this candy machine in the barbershop, right? Come in, you put quarters in it, you turn the little thing, and it brings out candy. Sometimes people would put quarter in there and nothing would come out. Right? So after a while, I just got to the point where I got so tired of going over and giving people their quarter back, I just said, you know what, just don't nobody touch the candy machine. There was this one little kid, Rock. Rock would always be sitting next to the candy machine just eating candy. Man, it always worked for Rock. Come to find out, Rock had figured out that if you put the quarter in there, turn it twice to the left, and then turn it to the right, it gave you more candy than you were supposed to get just putting the one. He had figured it out, okay? That's the way I look at politics.
Yeah.
I think that people in Akron and really all over the country, black people in particular, we just get tired of going up, putting our quarter in, turning it, and nothing coming out.
Listen.
So
yeah.
now I'm looking for this podcast. I said, okay, we got somebody who's going to show us the trick to getting something out of this system. 2 turns to the left, 1 turn to whatever it is we need to do. But I think that we'll get a lot more people participating in the system if we understood how it works.
That's right.
And if we knew what actions we needed to take in order to kick the result out. Okay, so this is what we are hoping that you can give us. And I feel really strongly that we can get that done. So we want to talk real quick. Let's talk about this Citizens Review Board, issue 10. Tell us about that and tell us why that's important.
So issue 10, it passed here in the city of Akron by 62%. A lot of people focus on the current of issue 10, but issue 10 was something that was supposed to happen almost 17 years ago. So I commend those who really pushed it now, but this should have happened when Demetrius Vincent was killed. There was supposed to be a Citizens Review Board.
17 years ago.
Over by Dan Street, Demetrius Vincent, we called him Ray Ray, was killed over on the street over across from Dan Street in his grandmother's driveway. Police pulled up behind him. They started shooting into the car, and the coroner said it was a homicide, and then 2 days later she came back and said it was suicide. So the family hired Cyril Weck to come in and do another autopsy, and he said it would almost be impossible for him to have killed himself. But it was a lot for that family. I know this family. This is my son-in-law's little brother who was killed. My grandson is named after his uncle who he had never met. So it was personal for me when they all say issue 10, issue 10. Like, wait a minute, we have people like Pastor Butcher and John Beatty, who were at the beginning stages of pushing this almost 17 years ago when Rayshawn was killed. And I'm glad to see that it has come to fruition now, but just imagine what has happened in that time frame from then until now, where we probably should have had this review board in place. And this is the thing that our community has to stop doing, is getting complacent. We get angry, we get mad, and then we go sit back.
And then playoffs start and we back.
And then we back over here instead of just keeping our foot on the pedal and saying, no, we're not letting up until we actually see something done. There's people who take credit for the police auditor being in place. Now, the police auditor's position was created because of what happened to Rayshawn Benson. And so we have a police auditor who really doesn't have any power anymore because they've taken it all away from him. I mean, he's there when you want to have a complaint against an officer. He finally got him an administrative assistant. And so he's always had, his back against the wall. And now he has to actually report to someone in the mayor's cabinet, where before he was supposed to be independent of everyone. But now he's having to report to people. So now you've really
undid what you did.
Exactly.
Right.
So here we are again. Issue 10
later.
went out, and what issue 10 showed the residents and showed downtown was 62% of residents, that's black and white, that's not just black people, said something needs to be done. We're tired of hearing about this police brutality. We're tired of hearing about these officer-involved shootings. It passed in every ward in the city except for Ward 6. Ward 6 is the only ward that voted for Trump.
Okay.
Whoa.
Well, I'm not going to say that makes sense.
So
that's
the place where it didn't pass. It passed in every other ward in the city except for in 6. But I do believe there's people out there who support it, but the numbers out there were totally against it. And this is not about saying that officers are bad and we want to police the officers. This is about transparency and making sure that we all are on the same page. And I think this review board will have those powers to review and say, this doesn't sound right. We need to make a recommendation to them. This needs to happen, or maybe they need to pass it on to someone else who actually has the power to do something, because that's the one thing this review board doesn't have. It doesn't have the power of subpoena or to remove an officer, but it does have the power to review and make a recommation.
And they'll be able to provide some sense of transparency to the citizens.
Which we need. We need. There's the one thing about it I was totally against was the fact that the mayor only had to have a simple majority, which is 7 votes, but council had, for our picks, we had to have a super majority, which was 9 votes.
Now, what was the reason behind that?
You know, everybody has their say about why they did it. They said because they wanted there to be a consensus. Well, anyone who's paid attention to city council should have known you were never going to get a consensus because they would always make sure the numbers worked in their favor. Right. They know they have 7 votes.
7 votes right
they know they have 7 votes off the bat. So you can get one of them to have one of them play the game with us for a little while.
Right.
And we'll get 8 and now we're stuck. And I kept calling for the vote all the way up until midnight, hoping that one of them would come along. And none of them ever did. Only one did was Sharon Connor, but still, they only had 8 votes. Right. We only had 8 votes. They knew we were never getting to 9. They knew that.
Wow.
They knew they were never going to let Imo Kayokolo on that board.
That's
they
what
knew
I was about to
they
say.
knew that.
Elephant in the room.
Yeah. Nobody really wants to have that conversation. We know from everything that I could find about it. It was some reason about him making some Facebook, social media posts about him calling the police pigs during the.
Right.
I said to myself, "Don't tell me that it's more than that. Tell me that it's more than that.
That's it.
What is the reason that this gentleman is not on the board?" I've looked at him. He's pretty sharp.
Oh yeah, he's sharp.
He's sharp. So in judgment, I'm talking about, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to issues dealing with race, that's kind of like his lane.
Yeah.
So, I think that me personally, of course, I'm a barber, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just kind of sticking my toe in your little pond.
No, but listen,
you know what I'm saying?
There's so much that happens in barber and beauty shops. If you want to know anything,
you go find out.
Okay,
so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, well, this guy, it seems like you would want him, I would have him as the president of the Citizens Review Board because he can kind of help other people know how to think their way through a situation. Right. And you're dealing with regular citizens. Yeah. I don't mean to sound crazy, but there's a process to coming to a conclusion when a person's thinking something out. Right. And if you don't have practice doing that, you let emotions get in the way, and this, that, and the other. It's not objective. So to have a gentleman like that, that could be strong. It could help the city. Are you focused on what's good for the city?
Well, that only makes sense, doesn't it?
That makes sense.
Right.
That only makes sense.
Too much sense.
Yeah. Okay. He, I think, would have been what the city needed. He is the face of a Jalen Walker. When we talk about Jalen Walker, when we talk about a Rayshawn Benson, Imo Kayokolo is the person that should have been there. Right. He is very analytical in his reasoning, and that is the reason why I thought him being present on that board would have just been impactful for the entire city. He works at one of the biggest law firms in the country, Jones Day. He works at a law firm, and this is the work he does at that law firm. And so, unfortunate for him, there were council members who made concessions with the FOP to make sure he never got on that board. And to admit that, to me, was troubling and problematic, that you made a consensus and made a commitment to people outside of the people who voted you into that seat. Right. And it seems like no one says or has anything to say about it, but I can tell you if that was Russ Neal that did it, we'd be having a different conversation. We'd be having a different conversation. If that was me, they'd be opening up an investigation because they love doing that to me. That's what they do. Okay. So this is what the problem is down there, is when you have an administration who already knows they have 7 votes on that floor. Right. How do we really do the people's work that really needs to be done in a meaningful way if they don't agree with it? Now, I've been able to bring in the most legislation and resolutions than anybody running in this race because I found my way through this chaos and madness. And it took me a while to do that, to be able to have conversations with people or making them see the importance of this piece of legislation or resolution, even if they don't like me. Right. That's a good piece of legislation. Yeah. I mean, we can't do this to her because it's a good piece of legislation. But it took me a while to get there. I remember when I first got there, I went in flipping tables. I'm gonna do this, and they blocked everything I brought in. They were specifically told by that then mayor, anything she tries to bring in, make sure it doesn't pass. And I felt defeated. I was in my first year, almost headed into re-election, and I almost wasn't gonna run again. I was like, oh God, I know this is not what you sent me over here for. Right. There's no way you wanna keep me in this madness. Wow. I mean, they had done everything to me. besides blocking my legislation, opening up these investigations that ended up dying, trying to send a union guy after me, and the law department had to slam him. It was so much. Listen, Pastor Hampton said something to me and Daryl at church last Sunday. We visited his church, and he said, this seat is for somebody who's been through the fire.
Wow.
This seat is for somebody who's been through the
I
fire.
agree.
And I was like,
agree.
well, he definitely talking about me.
What did I say though? I said I agree. I said because if you look at the ward that you've been councilwoman over, you're on every side of town, right?
Every side except for the west side.
Okay, except for the west. You got what, 3 terms?
Yeah.
You got we highlight in what is it, like over 500 million economic development.
Oh no, more than that. It's 1.2 billion.
It's
Let's
1.
get
Okay.
that. We want to make sure we get
Correct
that right.
me. Yeah, get me together. Yeah, get me together.
We gotta update that on the website.
Okay.
It's 1.2 billion
Okay.
and counting.
And you've governed, to me, the most complicated ward in Akron.
It's tough.
Yeah,
It's
tough.
all over the place.
It's tough. And the thing about it is, when they just did this redistricting, I assumed that they were going to condense it.
Right.
And I said, okay, so let's see what game they're going to play. They're either going to try to take the north side from me, or they going to try to take the east side. And it was really hard for them to try to figure the east side out, because none of these other council members would ever be able to maneuver that. But in their mind, I'm thinking, yeah, they're going to try to give the north side all of Lombardo. I was getting all mad about it, like, but okay, they'll probably take these 4 or 5 streets in South Akron. They should probably be in Ward 7 anyway, but I'm gonna deal with it, whatever.
Okay.
Not only did they not take it from me, they extended me further up in North Akron. I'm like 3 streets from hitting Cuyahoga Falls now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
they extended it, but then when you get to the bottom of the hill where I helped with the launching of Lot 15, they took all that from me. So I was not happy about that. And actually, Tony Tropy and them weren't happy about it. They're like, wait a minute. She helped us build this district up down here. And so they just going back and forth with me, because they really wanted the other side of the street over by Cascade Village, in that corner of North Street and Howard Street. Yep. And I was kicking and screaming because we trying to build a grocery store there. Yes. So no, you're not getting that side of the street. So if I've got to make a concession. Okay, I'm gonna give you Lot 15, but I ain't happy about it at all. But you're not getting that side of the street. You're not getting that side of the street.
That's just like Mark Jackson after he built the Golden State Warriors.
Right, then you're fired.
Yeah, he goes, handed the Curry.
Celebrating winning championships and take all the credit for it.
Wow,
that's exactly what it was.
That's exactly what it was.
So we got community and police relations, public safety. While we're coming off of this Jalen Walker conversation, I remember as a kid, I couldn't have been no more than about 7. Right here in the corner of Howard and Salone. First interaction with the police. Playing in the middle of the street. Some friends, we playing football in the middle of the street. Police officer rolls up, parks the car, gets out, comes up to us, asks us our names, deputizes us, gives us these little plastic badges. Y'all see anything going on in the community that don't look right? Don't do anything. Don't get involved. Just go to an adult and tell the adult to call the police. We took that little oath. Man, we felt good. Changed my whole perception of the way that I interact with police, probably for the rest of my life. What's your view, your plan? What's wrong with what's going on with the city as it relates to police relations and community relations and public security? How do we make the city of Akron safer?
Right. So when we think about public safety, I actually co-chair public safety for the city. The first thing we have to do is get our officers back in the neighborhood. They were in the neighborhood when we were younger. Yeah. We knew who the police officers was. And we knew when we seen cop car number 5, we was getting out of the way, because we knew he was coming to tell us, get off the wall, get your butts home. But the other ones, they didn't do that, but they were on their bikes. They were riding through. We would see Officer Ridgeway or Officer Miles.
Sylvia.
They on their bikes, pedaling bikes, coming through the neighborhood. You don't see that anymore. What happened to the police presence in the neighborhood? Not just coming through in a confrontational way, in a meaningful way where the kids all know you. Because if they know you and they have respect for you, there's nothing they won't tell you. And that's the thing that has not happened. So in our plan, we call for that. And we also call for putting substations, which Columbus and Cleveland call district stations, in the neighborhood. They need to be in the neighborhoods, not sitting in the building in downtown. We could put substations, one on each side of town. You have a presence in that community, and now you build relationships and you build trust. And that's what it has to be about. If you're not going to build relationships and trust, why are you there?
Right.
Why are you there? We can keep saying, well, we want to make sure our police officers look like our neighborhoods. Yeah, but we want to make sure even if they look like our neighborhoods, we want to make sure that they are part of the neighborhood in a meaningful way, not an adversarial way. Because that could be of any color.
It's only about 11% Akron Police Department is African American, right?
But it's getting better, and I'll tell you, this new academy that just was seated on April the 3rd, it is the most diverse class they've had in years.
Okay.
And they have more women in this class than they've had in a decade.
About 38 officers, right?
Yeah, 38, and 9 of them are women. They've not had that in over a decade. So we got some work.
What caused that change? What's the change?
I think it was they put together an advisory board to talk about targeting and looking for people who look like the community. Okay. Now, what they do need to get better at is they need to make sure that these officers live here. Because of the Supreme Court ruling, they don't have to live in Akron.
Right.
They don't have to live in Akron.
Wow.
And so that's a problem, because one of the things that they were doing, they had billboards all the way in Cleveland recruiting. Wait a minute, what? Why are we recruiting officers from Cleveland? Cleveland don't even want their officers in Cleveland. So why are we recruiting officers in Cleveland? We got some good stock right here at home that we really be tapping into, but that only happens if you're doing it in a meaningful way. Like, you could put billboards up and say, you can have tattoos and work for the police department. Oh, that's great. However, how much do you make? Right. I don't care about the tattoos. Right. Tell them that you come here making $63,000 a year and watch the interest grow.
Oh, okay.
The interest will grow. If I'm 63 a year coming in, yeah. And now the police academy is in-house now, and you get paid now while you're in the academy. So most of them wasn't joining because the fire department, you were getting paid while you were in the fire academy, but you weren't getting paid in the police academy. Now you get paid while you're in the police academy. But in order for that to even happen, we got to take down the other barriers.
What's that?
So we had a committee called Reimagining Public Safety. I chair personnel and culture. The things that I felt would help them with recruiting is barriers being taken down. One barrier is get rid of the maximum age requirement. You're not going to find nobody 60 want to be a police officer. Right. But you might have somebody who's 50 or 55 that's in better shape than some 20-year-old who, because he has this wealth of knowledge of how to deal with people, he's going to react, or she's going to react totally different than some 20-plus-year-old hothead. You'll be like, yeah, wait a second, let's calm this down a little bit. And that's one of the areas where we can recruit more. We need to make sure we get rid of all of these. We're going to check your credit. If you got bad credit, you can't be a police officer. How about we take them through credit counseling? Right. While they're in the academy, help them get their credit together. And the best way to get somebody's credit together is what? Give them a job. Yeah. Right. Give them a job. Yeah, that's it. And stop testing for marijuana. If you're once you become a police officer, absolutely you should test for it, but not in the beginning stages. And don't get them in the interview process and try to trick them up. Have you ever smoked weed before? Now you got this young person worried.
Have you ever smoked weed before?
Come on. Come on.
Yeah, you ain't gonna tell the truth.
So now you're gonna lie, and now instantly that's deception to them. You're gonna be kicked out. So then if you do say yeah, that's gonna kick you out. Like, yeah, I just smoked a blunt yesterday. Now what? Now that's gonna kick you out? Take that away, because like I told you in personnel and culture, if you're not gonna test for steroids, don't test for marijuana. Because the thing about marijuana, it does this to you.
Right.
Steroids makes you angry, makes you aggressive. So if you're not going to test for steroids, don't test for marijuana. And then once they're in there, you got to make sure you diversify these police cars. You need to make sure that
I like that idea.
You have to diversify the police cars. You have to, because now they can learn from one another. Especially when you have a district like mine, and you're putting all of these young rookie officers, some from the southern parts of Ohio, who've never even been in minority communities, and now you want them to police
minorities, right?
Of course, some of them are going to be concerned and nervous and scared.
And they only go off of what they've heard.
And what they heard.
These
not
young
what
boys,
know,
right.
What they've heard. And so if you diversify, they're going to learn from one another. It's just like taking a minority officer and say, you know what, we're going to stick you out in Ella for your first time. It's just going to be you out there. And you just got to change it up there. So
Now,
I think you do those things, it'll help.
Okay, so you talk about diversity, and I see diversity as it relates to race, but I think that there's an elephant in the room that a lot of these times people call 911. It's not for crime-based offenses. A lot of times it's mental health, people acting out, people having breakdowns, and and then you send two officers who both are used to dealing with fighting crime and that type of thing, and then they come to somebody that has a mental health issue, they don't know how to handle it, and they end up killing them or shooting them.
Right.
So do the diversity kind of cross over into having some officers who have that training to deal with mental health issues as well?
You see me smiling because I'm just waiting to just dive into it. So
stop talking.
Let me just be here. So another thing that we talked about during Reimagining Public Safety was we have a partnership with Stark State, Akron. And so if you're a city employee, whether part-time, summer, you can go to Stark State for free. So with that being said, when you have someone that's in these academies that they have at the Akron Public Schools, you can't be a police officer until you're 21. But most of them are coming out of the academy in the high schools at 18 years old. Well, you can't be a police officer yet. So why don't we give them some kind of summer job? Now they're considered a city employee. They can go to Stark State for those 2 years while they're waiting to even take the test to get into the academy. And we're paying for them to get either a certification or associate's degree in some kind of social service dealing with addiction and mental health. Because you can do that at Stark State and they don't have to pay for it. So now they're there, not just idle time, because a lot can happen between the time they're 18 and 21 while they're waiting. So
it always does.
Give them something conducive to that police department that they want to be a part of. You have a degree how to deal with someone who is having a mental health issue. So you know how to deal with them. So we have our unit at the city that deals with people specifically with mental health issues. It's a crisis intervention training. And so those officers are the ones who normally respond when someone is in crisis. But all the officers should be changed. It shouldn't be a special unit. And that is one of the things that I've been able to talk with the chief about, talked to ADM Lord about, and one of the things that I've told them when I become the mayor of this city, and if people show up, I will absolutely be the mayor of this city, is making sure all of our officers are trained, CIT trained officers. So when someone is having in crisis, we all now know that this officer now knows how to deal with them in a very genuine way instead of in a very aggressive way. And that is how we curve what we see out here. And I'd say that as a mother of a child with a mental health issue, a mother of a child where the police have come to my house, and thank God some of these officers knew me and knew my son. I was like, yeah, we know Brian. He's having a moment. Let us just talk him off the ledge here. And they would go in and talk to him, and they're texting me like, hey, Tara, we got to take Brian in. And I'm like, okay. But that's only because they knew me. Now, it didn't matter. There were still some of them that didn't like me, wanted to make sure it made it to the newspaper. But it was enough of them that understood my plight with my son and what I had been dealing with over his 20 years of him having a traumatic brain injury. And so they knew how to deal with him and how to make sure that he got in the spaces that he needed to be in. But that has to happen across the board with all individuals, because prisons can't be mental health hospitals. And that's what they've turned
That's
into.
what they've been doing.
That's what they've turned into.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So from your experience, in the real world, as mayor, you looking at like expanding police training to where we enter into being able to identify that, something you instead of you riding up and shooting this kid, there's something wrong with this person right here. And that we need some advanced training.
But we also need to make sure, even with all of that there are services in place for those officers who are dealing with crisis, that are dealing with trauma, because we have some of that. If they're dealing with mental health issues, I met a company. I sit on the board of directors for the National League of Cities, and they actually have a program specifically for them to put on their phones, and it's anonymous when they're in crisis. The officers can go in there and put the things in, and they're like, okay, they're in crisis. I'm absolutely going to implement that program for them, because the thing about it is we got to make sure both parties are well. Because if you have an officer who's unwell and on the streets, guess what? The community's going to pay for it.
The old guard is not talking about that.
No.
The old guard is not talking about
Okay,
that.
let's slide over to economic development and job creation. What's the city's role? You know, you see a lot of people, you know, sometimes you feel like, okay, private sector is the private sector's job, and let them invest in it, and we'll just give them tax breaks and subsidies and whatnot in order to be able to let that go. And then other people say, no, it's the city's job. As mayor, how do you look at that? What's the responsibility of the city for economic development, and how do you go about creating that?
Well, I think it's the city's, it's one of our main focuses has to be on economic development, because how do you build population?
Because we're losing, we're dropping.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Except for North Hill. This is the only place where population has grown. That is,
Because the
the
refugees,
immigrant community
right.
is why. I mean, it has grown immensely up here, and that's why they had to do all the redistricting in this area, because this is the area where all the growth took place. Nowhere else. Everywhere else, they lost, except for up here.
Wow.
So what administration, under our administration, I should say, will do is making sure that we have the resources available for entrepreneurs and small businesses to be able to grow. And if you do not take care of your entrepreneurs and your small and medium-sized businesses, I mean, they are the drivers of the economy of any community.
Of course.
And so you have to make sure that you have plans in place to make sure that they're able to be successful. I mean, you can keep giving all the tax breaks to all the big companies like the Amazons up on Roman Road, but then how does that help the ones who are actually driving the economy? Because if Amazon picked up and moved tomorrow, then what?
We done.
Then what?
Mm-hmm.
And now this is the thing that for me in particular, it's one thing that I have been hearing for a while. And I seen a statistic that they said it's about 2 million black-owned businesses in the United States. But they say about 124,000, 125,000 of them, it's only about that many that have more than 5 employees. Most of them are like mom and pop,
Yeah.
1, 2, like the proprietor, the person who owns the business is them and their family,
Right.
maybe a couple other people. So a lot of times those businesses that's on that small level, you're not making $1 million, but you don't really get a lot of that help that they have when it comes down and trickles down from the city. So
Right.
how did that work? Is it somewhere that we
Right.
could kind of squeeze in a little
Absolutely.
bit?
It's not even about a squeeze, because it's something that needs to happen.
Okay.
So we have a department called the Office of Integrated Development. And so they had all these grants that they were giving out for these ARPA funds that we had. The windfall is what we call it, that I don't think we did it. Well, let me back up. I don't think the mayor did a good job of distributing them, because he was given free autonomy to give them out because he had 7 votes. And so he was able to give the money out without any
Is this the section 56?
No, it's a whole other thing right
Okay,
there. We
okay.
might be here all night, geez. So because this $146 million that was given to us in ARPA funds, the Office of Integrated Development was able to come in to help small business owners out with grants. However, if you were an entrepreneur or a small business owner with less than 3 employees and they weren't on payroll, you were exempt.
Yeah.
And to me, that was backwards, because they're the ones who need the most help.
Right.
So why not help them? I have a business right now in downtown Akron who she should have been able to get all the help she needed to keep it. She's keeping our young people off the streets.
Right.
And now she's about to be forced to close because she doesn't have the help that she needed to sustain. And the downtown Akron is now about to go under its 3rd reconstruction. So it's affecting all those businesses down there. So why not have something in place where you can actually give them the resources, and everybody a resource. Oh, you want to give free stuff away. It's not about giving free stuff away. It's about, they may need help with writing a business plan. This is more than just going and getting an EIN number, open up a bank account and saying this is enough. No, help them with a business plan so then they can get a business structure together. So now if they do have to go to the bank to get a substantial amount of money in a loan, they have a plan.
Right.
They're not giving you no money without a plan.
No.
You're not walking to no bank with an EIN number and they're
And
giving
get-
you
right.
money. They're just not. But our Office of Integrated Development, it exempts them from being able to receive the grant funding. However, they offer them loans. That's backwards to me. Why would you offer somebody who's on the startup parts of their business
Loan
a loan?
versus a grant, right?
It just didn't make any sense to me. So that's one of the things that under our administration, we will absolutely make sure we fine tune, and we have all of these the financial literacy departments. We got one in Kenmore, we got one at Robinson.
That's good.
But who really knows about it?
Right. As a business owner in my lane is financial services. I'm in insurance. And so I went through quite a bit of those, you know, trying to obtain funding for grants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, if you don't have 3 employees, or if you don't have W-2 employees, which it's a 1099, it's 100% commission, but you basically will not be obtaining any grants, any funding. They kind of just throw you to the side.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm finding I got kids, I got 2 sons in their mid-20s. They got friends and people that even if they in college or coming out of college, they going out yonder and becoming producers, insurance producers in those communities. And it's like, I could, you know, put about 3, 4, 5 different individuals in that, you know, in that role, but they don't want to issue us the funding because of those little loopholes, those blocks.
Loopholes and red tape.
Yeah.
And the job creation is kind of connected to, because there's a direct relationship between youth employment and violence reduction. So once you solve the one, it's helping you. Like, this is a skeleton. Everything is connected. It's not one situation in government that is just floating off by itself.
Right.
You know, all of it is like a domino. When you grab one and pull it, it's going to connect into something else and make something else go wrong.
Right. So when you even talk about youth violence, one of the things in our platform that we talk about is, back in the day, remember they had the PIC program. You get a summer job.
Right.
And the best way to get these young men and women off the block, give them a job.
Give them a job.
And so now they have the county offers jobs, but now it comes with all these, again, stipulations, red tape. Can't have any open cases with the juvenile court center, and can't be on probation. Well, they're the ones we really need to be having jobs for. I mean, that just, to me, is common sense.
So what does Tara Mosley do with that? With, like, you mayor, boom, let's what's the plan?
We're bringing the summer youth employment back to the city of Akron.
Gotcha.
And instead of us giving the money to these outside contractors to cut the lawns that they do a terrible job doing anyway, let our kids cut the grass. We used to cut the grass. We don't want to hear nothing about the insurance or none of that. We'll make sure the insurance is there, but why not let those kids have some kind of stake in their neighborhood? Because now they have pride. If I know I cut that grass on the corner of Milton and Chittenden, I'm going to be feeling a certain kind of way if you drive down the street and throw some trash in it, because I know I cut it.
Right.
So give them something to have some pride in, and that's in their neighborhood. So when we keep talking about all this littering, we got young people who just need some money.
Hey, and don't let them, don't set something up to where they can partner together in partnership and start their own landscaping company.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And manage it themselves.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's
what I was
right.
thinking.
That's kind of like on the job training right
On
there.
the
They can
job
get
training.
employment skills, they can get business skills, you can get all kinds of stuff like that.
Right,
So,
and absolutely, and because the one thing that I've noticed, even when I had a couple landscapers in my ward who bid on some of these jobs, and the first thing the city told them was they don't have the right equipment. Okay, so what do they need? Well, I mean, they live here, they're in my ward. And so under our administration, we'll make sure those tools that may be needed for some people who want to help, and they got some young people working with them. I mean, Sully's, you can go and rent stuff. I know the city got some maintenance department somewhere with stuff all stacked in it. Why not offer that to them if they're here in our city, instead of my contractor for Ward 5, he didn't even live here.
Wow.
He lived in a whole other county.
Wow.
Right.
Like an hour away.
Wow.
That didn't make any sense to me. I had someone in the ward who wanted to do the work.
Wants to do the work.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good deal. I like that. I like that, Terry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I had to say that. You know, I get to talking about, you know what I'm saying? I get to talking about that stuff. It's kind of, you know, to me it seems so simple, but you know what I'm saying? I guess people make it more complicated than it is.
It's common sense.
Education, the Akron Public School System. Let's talk about the educational system. Are you happy with it?
I am not happy with the fact that everyone is more worried about personality conflict instead of worrying about our kids and worried about their safety and worrying about the safety of these teachers. I think everyone is so worried about school board and superintendent not getting along, or the union president not getting along with the superintendent. And the main focus should have always been on our children. And I've been very vocal about that. We all have personality conflicts, and we have to get past that and worry about what is going on in our schools that is making these schools unsafe. And now we have to put metal detectors in them, and the teachers don't feel safe. Kids are hitting teachers. We got kids who want to learn. We got kids who are dealing with trauma. kids who are homeless, kids who are dealing with food insecurities. All these things need to be addressed, but they're too worried about personalities down at the school board. That to me is secondary to what's going on inside these schools.
Right.
And some of these schools got some chaos going on.
Right.
When you talk about there's more kindergartners in the Akron Public Schools under suspension or expulsion in any grade in the system, that's a problem.
Right.
That's a big problem.
So we dealing with definitely it's starting at home.
Yeah.
And so I had somebody that actually asked me about asking you a question in regards to like how big is the bullying dynamic in regards to gun violence in the school, violence in the school. How what's your take on that?
Yeah, the bullying is there. I was bullied, you know, but I had a brother, unfortunately, who just didn't discriminate if you bullied on his sister. We had to get him to reel himself in on a couple things, but I was bullied. So I that dynamic is there. And when you talk about kids who are being bullied, now you got to worry about the kid coming to school with a gun because he's tired of being bullied or she's tired of being bullied. So how are we really addressing this in the schools? I mean, they don't really have counselors there anymore. They did have, I think it's Family First was in the schools, and they moved them out of the schools, and they were dealing with a lot of kids. They got one of the other counseling agencies in there, but they want to put all of this stuff based off of insurance.
Okay.
Nobody cares about insurance when somebody's child is being
Right.
bullied. So now they don't want to come to school.
It's not
You got
even an
these
issue.
kids who are committing suicide at a high rate right now because of bullying. And it's like, we can't sweep that under the rug
And see,
because
we
it
used to-
exists and
We
it's
used to didn't
there.
think black folks committed suicide all of a sudden.
Listen,
Oh.
I have the highest suicide rate in 44306 of black men right now
Wow.
in the city of
Wow.
Akron. And nobody talks about it.
Wow.
I had a whole ward meeting dedicated to the levels of suicide going on in that community with young black men and overdoses. I have the #1 zip code in the county
Wow.
of suicides of black boys. And the parents and grandparents who were at my meeting were in shock. And we encouraged them all to take Narcan and fentanyl test strips home. Because I said, you don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Listen, I've experienced it.
Right.
I've lived it. You better take this stuff home with you because you never want to say, darn it, I wish I would have taken it home.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's happening, but we as black
It
people,
is.
Yeah.
we have to be willing to want to talk about it because we all grew up in an era where don't tell nobody what's going on in
Right.
the house. Ain't
In your
nobody's
house.
business.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, don't be
Yeah.
But when you don't talk about it, now people are suffering in silence.
Yeah.
How many of these young people are being bullied, they're scared to go home and even tell their parents because their parents dealing with their own issues, their own trauma, and they might be just, they got their own things they ain't even dealing with.
Yeah.
So how do I even go to my mom or my dad about this person is bullying me at school?
Right.
And then they decide to take matters in their own hands one way or the other. And either way is not good.
All right, I'll tell you what, we could talk all night. We got about 10 minutes left. Housing. Now, it's gentrification,
It's real.
and
Ooh.
you want to get a conversation started at the barbershop. You get to talk about
Yeah.
gentrification.
Listen, I come in there and talk to them about the gentrification is
She
about to
said
happen.
it's real.
It's about to happen in Summit Lake and nobody paying no attention to
Nobody's
it.
paying attention.
And
Now,
I mean, let's talk about gentrification.
okay,
Go ahead, let's go.
explain to us exactly
What it is.
from your vantage point. See, we can look over here, but you get higher up on the building, you can see more of the curve of the earth. You get up in a little helicopter, you can see the roundness of the earth. Right there at the mayor's office, when you hear gentrification or see them coming with gentrification, how do you see that? What does it look like to you?
So this is what I tell my residents all the time, because when I was running for lieutenant governor in 2018, I was in Columbus, and I was talking to the residents about it. And I said, you guys got a coffee shop in this neighborhood now? They said, yeah. I said, they jogging in this neighborhood now? They said, yeah. I said, they walking their dogs in this neighborhood now? They said, yeah. Why you ask that? I said, gentrification is already here. It's already here.
Okay.
It's already here. When you start seeing them dumping $10, $20 million into a neighborhood, it's there.
Okay, so what is that? Because see, in sales they tell us about you got features and then you got benefits. So you giving me the features. How does that affect in how do I recognize it? Okay, yeah, I see that, but what's happening behind the scenes while I'm seeing these dogs and all of that? What does that a signal to me to say this is what's happening?
When you have residents in a community where their property value was once probably $27,000 and now their houses are being appraised at $100,000.
Wow. we're seeing that.
Right.
It's what's going on. It's what's going on. When you see them coming and they're putting in walking paths, and now they've got the little steam boats going across Summit Lake, and now you see them putting all the little swings up, and now they're getting ready to, they're calling it the North Shore. And now all the people who live in Summit Lake apartments, wait a minute, I think it's called Botanic Plaza. Now they all get to move out, and they're gonna build 200 beachside houses, and they're gonna give residents who are probably making less than $15,000 a year the first rights to come back and buy a house that costs over $200,000.
And that right there is almost like you just doing it. It's just like saying, okay, we're going to make sure that a black coach get an interview in the NFL, but you know you ain't going to hire.
That
you know
part.
what I'm saying? Okay,
that part.
The Rooney Rule,
It
right?
is. That's
yeah.
it.
Like
That's what it
okay.
is.
Rooney Rule.
Yeah. So they're going to get the first dibs at places that they'll never be able to afford. And yes, does that neighborhood need a lift up? Yeah, but not at the expense of the people. What about them? Where are they gonna go? Where are you moving them to? And I'm sure y'all seen our article in the paper where one of my volunteers went down there to do voter registration and was talking to them about, what are you guys gonna do when you move? Some of them was like, when we move where? Some of them didn't even know about it.
Wow.
Next thing you know, we were told we weren't allowed to canvas in Summit Lake anymore.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
We are not allowed to
You
canvas
down
in
there waking
MHA
people
properties anymore.
Wow.
So
You letting the cat out the bag, right?
Yeah. So, okay, so what happens with how that, because that's impacting home ownership. How do you function? How do we navigate and allow, because you basically putting citizens in a situation where they feel like they're being priced out of their homes. They're being forced out. That's the word, that's the language that's being used. But how does a person, because there's people that's taking advantage of gentrification. How do we get on the other side of that? What is that? Is it a financial thing or what is it?
yeah, well, firstly, you have a livable wage here in the city of Akron.
Okay.
And I mean, we have to start there.
There you go.
We were talking about $15 an hour, and I kept advocating about $15 an hour. We're past that now. I started that
Inflation.
advocacy a while ago. Now we need to move on from there incrementally. We need to be at $24 an hour. And as mayor, we were incrementally make sure we get employees to $24 an hour, because that's a livable wage. They could just, inflation alone shows the reason why $15 an hour is not going to allow you to take care of your family. So imagine if you worked in somewhere making federal minimum wage. You got to work almost 3 jobs just to be able to keep the rent paid and food on the table and the utilities paid. And at some point, something's going to have to give. Something's going to give. Either you going to the food bank now because you got to pay the rent, or you got to go somewhere and get emergency assistance to help with the utilities because now you got to pay your car payment. And God forbid, if you got a student loan you got to pay on, Jesus. I mean, you got all of these variables in place that making a federal minimum wage is never going to address. I mean, $15 ain't even addressing it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got to get to the point of a livable wage. But when we talk about housing, we have to build affordable housing in neighborhoods that people can afford to buy. You can keep building out west,
200,
the closest
300,
you can get to Bath you possibly can. You want to build townhouses that people can rent, lease for up to $2,300 a month.
Wow.
So if they can afford to pay $2,300 a month, they can afford to leave here at any time. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
So in like a MOSLEY administration, in terms of housing and property, what would be a plan? Because you also have current homeowners that, you got different programs that was tossed about, even during the pandemic, that people didn't qualify for. And then you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about building housing closer out to Bath and all of that. What about building up the infrastructure and the housing that's already there, like people being able to repair their homes and add value? We're talking about generational wealth, but if you can't,
Get on our website a little bit.
You got to have some value in the home to be able to pass that down and create that wealth. What would be your plan? Like, what would you do to help current homeowners add value to the homes that they currently own?
Right.
As far as repairing, what would your plan be in regards to that?
So the one thing that the city did with these ARPA funds that we were talking about is they set aside money to help with home repairs up to $25,000 a home. I think they should have scaled that back to $15,000 per home, because now you can spread the love. But there's so many people who've been forgotten. We had close to 2,000 people put in applications. They're saying they might be able to serve like 200 homes. Well, what about the other 1,800 people? What about that? And so why not start with our elders first? I mean, I've got some elders on the list that are in their 90s. We should have started with our elders first and worked our way through the list, because that is generational wealth for them. So these are the three main things that need done: roofs, electrical, and plumbing.
Yeah.
And so either you're going to people who are overbidding, or you're going to your buddies and letting them do it, where you could have hired people here locally and got a bang for your buck, somebody who came through here and did a lot of these roofs on a lot of these houses, and we could have kept it moving, because if you don't build up the housing stock in these neighborhoods, we will never ever see the population growth that they expect to see. You're just not going to see it. And that only happens if the funding is there. So one of the things under our administration that we are creating is called an elder fund. It's an elder fund where instead of having all of these different departments and you got to turn in birth certificates to get lead programs and just crazy. 65 and over, if you need assistance, you could come to the city, and we're not trying to make our elders get on a computer and try to make them do stuff that is so
outside of what they know.
They don't. They want to see something in front of them that they can look at and read and fill out, and they need help getting through the process. So we need to make sure that we have the assistance there to help them. But if they come and say, you know what, I need help with my plumbing, my roof is terrible, and we got to get rid of all these income restrictions, because you're not going to get an elder that's making over $100,000 in Social Security coming to you to ask for help. The ones that are on fixed incomes are the ones that are going to be coming asking for help. So we're going to put an elder care fund. This is something that's a priority for our administration. Is taking 10% out of my annual salary. Will be the beginning. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and we will fund it annually. And so whenever we're having, one of the things we will be bringing back is the mayor's ball, and everything that goes. Funding from the mayor's ball will go into this fund specifically for our elders.
That's nice.
I mean, a lot of younger people are like, why is she worried about our elders? We all got to age up out of here.
Right.
We all got to age up out of here. Listen, and so why not take care of our elders first? Why not? They are invested in this city. They're invested in this community. They are here for the long term. They're not sitting in the house going, oh, I can't wait to move. I'm leaving. They've been in this neighborhood 30, 40, 50 years. They're not going anywhere. So why not make it comfortable for them? Why not make it right for them?
Right.
All right, Tara.
That's big. That's big.
Like I said, we could be here forever. We got to go.
I'm going to come back after May 2nd.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. I'll tell you what, I appreciate you taking time out to come tonight.
Thank you.
Because I know how crazy your schedule's got to be. I know it's got to be crazy. So I appreciate you. I just want to let you know that. And just tell people, last minute stretch, we coming up to May 1st, May 2nd. And tell people how they can get contacted. They want to know more about your platform and familiarize themselves like that, but they're on their own time. How can people get in contact with you? Your social medias, kind of give us a connect on what all that is.
So if you want to know more about our platform for the city of Akron, you can log on to mosleyformayor.com. That's MOSLEYFORMAYOR.com. And it talks really extensively about our platform for the city. And the thing about it is, these are not just things that I'm running on. These are things that I've been doing from day one for the last 9 years that I've been there. So if I've been able to do it for my ward, I know I can do it from the city, because my ward touches every part of the city except for West Akron. So when we talk about someone who actually has been leading already, I've been leading, I've done the work, and now it's just saying I want to lead the whole city in the new direction, in the right direction that encompasses all of Akron, not just certain parts of Akron. Early voting has started. I encourage people to vote early at 470 Grant Street at the Board of Elections. They are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I encourage you all to vote early and vote now, because your polling location has changed. It has changed, and I can guarantee you are voting in a whole different side of town than you're used to. So I encourage you all, vote now, vote early. If not, you can join us on Saturday, April 29th. We're doing a unity vote. It's the only Saturday that is open for voting, and it's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we're telling you, find your friends, find your family. Everybody take 10 people with them to the vote. You take 10, we win.
There you go.
And that's just where we are. So again, I thank you all for having me. Again, log on to mosleypremier.com if you want to know more about our platform.
There y'all go. We got it. We got her in the can here. I appreciate you dropping by, Dame. I think we good.
We good.
All right. Appreciate y'all. And we'll talk to y'all next week.
So long.
All right.
All right.